Well, I want to welcome everyone back to Open Talk. I have an amazing guest here, a friend, fellow creator, Canon shooter, an instructor, person that sees motion and lights concepts like most people don't see. And that's why I'm so pleased to present Josh. Josh, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And you know what? Where are you zooming from, as they say nowadays?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be on the show. And I'm calling from my apartment in Brooklyn.
Sweet. So what have you been up to this, since all of this has kind of gone down, this whole COVID thing? How's that, changed the way you shoot and what you do and your lifestyle and affected you?
Yeah, I've been on a pretty big creative journey these past few months. So when COVID struck, obviously, like every photographer, I was just trying to figure out what in the world I should be doing. And I tried taking photos from my bedroom window of people on the street. I tried setting up a mirror to see if I could, redirect light to do something really interesting there. And none of that was working. And then on like the first weekend of quarantine, I decided to go up to my rooftop and I knocked on a few of my neighbors' doors to invite them because I was actually able to jimmy off the hatch locks. And I'm like, oh, they should all know about this. And it just turned out to be this really vibrant scene. And it struck me like, okay, this is it. This is going to be this evolution of roof culture. Like this is going to be our new lives for.
Well, I know that we're going to get really deep into that later, and I think it's so exciting. And the photos are absolutely beautiful. But you know what? What I'm going to do is we're going to jump in our little time machine here, and we're going to go all the way back to little Josh. And where were you born?
Yeah, all right. Love the quick pivot. Yeah,
we could have spent, which we were going to get to anyway, the time on that, but you know what? We got to get back to the beginning to find out how you got to that present point. Because you know what? My favorite thing about diving into this is everybody can talk to photographers and just say, oh, how was this picture created? But it's actually the way you see is so unique to you that we have to go all the way back to find out how you got there. And if we don't discuss all the kind of like influences you had as a kid from your parents to all that, we're never going to really see, oh, now I kind of get a little more insight in the head of, Josh Katz, and that's what I want to see. So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. Tell me about where you were born and your parents.
Wonderful. The very beginning. So I was born in Northern Virginia, and my dad is obsessive with technology. He had like the first SLR camera that was filmed from Canon. He had the first Walkman. He's had all of the firsts. And, he had us on the first MP3 player. And yeah, he is the one that got us into these little micro. It was the Ape Tech 360p, 144p, horrific video cameras, but it was like one of the first consumer affordable electronic cameras. And yeah, he got them for my brother and me in 2005, 2006, right around the dawn of YouTube. And he also told us about YouTube. And yeah, that prompted a whole.
Well, you're jumping even before, we're starting at the beginning, brother. You were born in Virginia. Where did you go? Where did you go to school?
I went to school in Virginia. I went to college in New York.
So you grew up, and you want to skip everything, man. No, we're sticking with like the early elementary, and we're going to go through it. We're going to go through this, man. You're just jumping straight to the present, and I know we're going to get there. So tell me about elementary school. Was it were you a creative back then? Was it if you had to make a high school movie, what cliques were you hanging out with?
Yeah, so my life has always been about skateboarding, and early on, I started skating at 7 or 8, and it just completely dominated my life. So, I mean, I love school, I love learning, and I've been a big math guy my entire life. But yeah, my middle school, high school life was skateboarding and making YouTube videos.
So you were hanging with these skateboarders, and the first the influences were you watching the videos first? Was it people in your neighborhood that were skateboarding? What got you kind of into it?
They all go hand in hand, but I'll say the very beginning was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and my older brother. It's like the same exact answer every skater will give you. But, I mean,
Tony Hawk has been the influence for many, many a young boy. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. But skate videos are like still my biggest source of inspiration. They're most of my skateboarders tend to either be people that only skate and do nothing else, or the most brilliant creatives in the world. And Spike Jones, guys like that are infinite creative inspiration.
A lot of houses and photo houses started as skateboard places in New Jersey. I mean, in Brooklyn, and there were some incredible studios and parties and stuff like, you know, before your days that were absolutely off the hook. That were sort of you know, these skate houses that turned into that they would do parties there and DJs, and it kind of all went hand in hand with the photographers and the art and stuff like that. It was an amazing scene back in yeah, I guess it was the early '80s. You know, so I mean, I definitely was a skateboarder too, and I remember, like, you know, checking out all the different boards and all the different bearings and all the different wheels, and like what wheels were good for this and what good for that. But for you, did you start just skateboarding and then create videos, or was it kind of sort of that hand-in-hand thing again? How did you start creating these videos?
Yeah, so I got on YouTube when I was 9 years old in 2006, in the same way that like a kid signs up for Instagram now. It's like, oh, here's this new social media. This is interesting. I have a camcorder. Let's just try making some stuff. And I ended up building a pretty big audience really early on. I was a horrible skateboarder at the time. I was like maybe 2 years into it. I was not good. I was not film worthy, but I thought it'd be interesting to do. And we ended up forming this really beautiful community of skateboarders on the internet. And I was one of the first to do it, and got some of the most traction as a result. And it was all about just selling your own progression and being this relatable skateboarder. And this was like the first time you've ever been able to see amateur skateboarding on the grand stage, because this is, of course, pre-Instagram, pre-cell phone. So it really was these YouTubers that pioneered the early culture of sharing yourself skating if you're not a professional.
Yeah. How old were you when you first realized, wow, I'm getting an audience, and this means something, and I can actually kind of do, and what did you do with that once you realized that?
Yeah, I mean, I never knew how big it could be, and I still to this day I'm always like, oh wow, this is what can happen from all this. Like, it's the shockwaves have been incredible. But like, you know, I got my first YouTube check at 12 years old, when I was too young to officially be on YouTube still. You know, I had to go through my parents' name and all that. And it was this moment of like, oh my God, this is something. I don't know what it is, but I'm having a great time. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to keep doing it and seeing what happens. And, you know, it led to like another creative reckoning, if you don't mind me jumping forward a few years. Was when I got injured. When I was 16, I smashed my face skateboarding. There's a great YouTube video if you want to check it out, skateboarding face smash. Should still come up first. But, you know, knocked some teeth out, really bloody incident. And I realized, okay, like I can't always skate. I have to do some other things. I have to figure out how to diversify. And I had like decided, all right, well, skateboarding is still my life. I'm going to take skateboard photos. I'm just hanging out with all the same people and just being behind the camera now. And I've been making skate videos for a long time.
What were you using to make the videos back, you know, before you were kind of like, wow, photography? What were you using as your gear then?
The 8-tech camera, and then the flip. Remember the flip?
Oh, yeah.
Flip out USB stick.
Yeah.
Still a beautiful camera, honestly. And then I had a little Sony camcorder, and then finally I got the Canon T3i, which was my first real camera.
Yep.
At 13, and that's kind of been the track I've been on ever since.
Yeah, and when you're creating these videos, were you your community? What were you kind of drawn by? What was influencing you at that time? I mean, obviously, what type of music were you listening to? Were you really kind of into like cinema and TV, or just not that at all? It was all about watching videos at home and that culture. What was kind of your influence back then?
Yeah, it was. I definitely wasn't into the art world yet, and that was an onset to come. But for now, it was just other like professional skateboard videos, which are always masterpiece artistic creations. And then, yeah, it was really simple. It was just about loving of skateboarding and community and connection. And yeah, I never really thought of myself as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I started to take that side a little more seriously as the photography expanded. But at first, it really just was like a utilitarian tool.
Because I know, like, growing up for me, like, I didn't discover photography till way later in my life. I mean, I did a lot of things that I thought. I worked in film and TV, and then I owned restaurants and bars, but I never thought of being a photographer. And looking back now I realize how much I loved cinema, and I actually knew more about cinematographers before I ever knew anything about any photographer. So I know that is a definite influence on me. Did you find anything like that for you artistically? Were you just like, wow, I've been watching these skateboard, Spike Jones was doing some amazing stuff back there. There were like some of those skateboard videos are actually unbelievable, and the technicality and what they're doing, and telling stories, and even the shots are just brilliant. So where were you getting your influences from, or do you know at that point?
Yeah, I mean, from ages 12 onward, I'd say my walls have always been covered with posters from the skateboard mags. I sense of I'm no longer doing posters because I'm pretending to be like, mature and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, my teenage room is just hundreds and hundreds of posters and rip outs from the magazines, and I was subscribed to all the major skate mags. And yeah, those guys like Bart Jones and Atiba and all these skate photographers, Artasari now, so many incredible dudes.
So I want to ask just quickly, what did your parents do? And then I want to segue into, were you a good student, a bad student, a good kid, or a bad kid? So what did your parents do first?
Yeah, my dad sells health insurance, and my mom is a health coach, and only one of them is healthy.
Were they supportive of you early on the skateboarding, or are they just like, oh, geez?
Incredibly supportive. They were really for it. They didn't like that I was like jumping down 10 stairs and risking my life. Of
course, yeah.
As most parents wouldn't. But yeah, super, super supportive. And they were just excited that I had a creative outlet, and were, really nurturing of that, which was awesome. And what was the second question?
Going into, like, what kind of student were you? Did you like school? Did you hate school? Were you like ready to sneak out and just go skateboarding afterwards? That was all consuming. Like, what was kind of driving you at that point?
I mean, I've always been a good student. I love learning so much. Yeah. I went to business school, so I'm in it. It's all fun. I love math. But I also am the kind of student who loves to pull pranks and keep things interesting. So, I definitely caused a slight ruckus here and there in school, but also had the grades, so you weren't concerned about me.
And you were hanging out with what kind of kids at that point? Was it kind of everybody, or just the skateboard, all just pure skateboarders pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have my friends who don't skate, but and I think that skateboarding makes you think about life in a far more like reckless, break the rules, set my own moral guideline kind of mindset, where, when you go and skateboard on architecture that wasn't designated for skateboarding, you are now taking an urban space and reconceptualizing how to use it. And you're breaking every social norm of like, you're rolling around on the ground, you're having strange conversations with people that are nothing like you, whether they be like, random passerbyers, because you are occupying that space in a way that is just right for interaction with strangers. And it makes you lose a lot of social fear. It makes, when you've been yelled at and run away from security guards and police, and random homeless folks when you're 13, you begin to think about regular social interaction with everyone else as just being so much more manageable. And the skateboarding mindset of that, it's rebellious, but it's also creative and abstract and reinterpretive is probably
it's also you must have been a sense of community, because I mean, the skateboarders, the community must have been something that really kind of drew you into it. And I don't think people realize the tightness of the community.
It's a really wonderful community. But I'm going to say that the mindset of the skateboarder and the reinventiveness is what has fueled my photography over the years to be where it's at today.
So you mentioned your accident, and that's sort of the segue that really kind of made you think about photography. What was it really that kind of went at that point where you're like, how did you make that segue? What was going on in your mind that you said, you could have picked a million things making movies, but you kind of picked the still picture. Why was that?
Yeah, so I mean, I had this big YouTube channel at this point where it was making money, it was a business, and it's like, all right, well, one, I want to be able to figure out what is the transition point here, and where does this go? And I still love skateboarding. I want to be involved with it in every way. And I had cameras, I had fisheyes, I had the gear. So it was like this very natural transition. And being a skateboard filmer is a thankless job. It's hours of work to get one shot, one take, one try, backbreaking efforts. Being a skate photographer to me is like way more rewarding with like none of that. Yeah, I mean, you get to make one beautiful photo. It's way simpler, or at least the capturing process. But creatively, it's as difficult as you want it to be. So yeah, I mean, it's skateboarding is everything to me, and it still is. But
so when you picked up that camera, and the Canon was really kind of your first camera that really kind of changed it for you. What process did you go from like, all right, I'm going to learn this, or was it a simple process, or was it I have to teach myself? Did you ask friends? Did you go to school for it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always taken every once in a while, a few years, I'll take like a photo elective class, but in general, it's like 95% self-taught. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm pretty split left brain, right brain. I can be really, photography for the longest time, I've just thought of as a craft more than
Mhm.
art. And it's just like, let's learn to do these things. Like, let's learn long exposures and play with light. And I was obsessed with that for the longest time. And then I started playing with flashes. And then I'm like, well, let's combine the two and do skate, flash, long exposure, work inspired by some of my favorite skate photographers. And, that is just this crazy reconceptualizing emotion that I just tickles me, is the absolute best.
Yeah.
So much fun. And yeah, that's a big one for me.
Did you find yourself so when you got this Canon, and how far does it take you? Like, you're in high school now, you have the Canon?
Hmm.
So when is you've already made money, sort of out of it, so I won't say what your first job, but realistically, what was the first time that you actually, you know, made money from that camera? Was it the Canon, or did you have more education? What was the transition to the first job?
Yeah, so YouTube has been my job for the longest time, and I was already bringing in money when I bought that camera, so you can think of it as an investment. But I was making definitely not all that artful videos. It was utilitarian, simple, filming yourself skate, making montages with music, very, very basic stuff. So like, I've definitely always been in this world of using the camera to make money, uh, but the money has always been kind of like secondary, of course.
But do you remember your first job with the camera, for a still?
First still job. So this is the other thing. I mean, I have a few clients now that I shoot for, but I haven't done that many jobs. And this is very conscientious of me. Like all right, first real job in, it's probably 16, the big bar mitzvah photographer in my town. I was curious about being a professional photographer. So
Yeah.
I linked up with him, and he took me to shoot a bar mitzvah. I was the second shooter. And on the drive over there, because I couldn't drive, maybe I was 15, doesn't matter. And I asked him, like, so you do great bar mitzvah event photography, making good money, but like, do you experiment much? Like, tell me about what else you do. Do you still love photography? And he goes, yeah, a few months ago, I did this experiment where I spun coins around and did long exposures. And you could tell he had to rack his brain incredibly hard just to think of that. And that he
Yeah.
clearly hasn't taken an experimental photo in years. And I don't mean to drag my town's incredible bar mitzvah photographer, but it did put this mindset of like, okay, like photography can be an art or it can be a craft. And yes, if you go into certain spaces of craftsmanship, then you can lose that art. You can lose the passion, and that's always scared me. So even as I was getting my work to be better and better, I've always been really conscientious about trying to keep photography pure and figure out ways that I can maintain autonomy and not have to do shoots that I don't want.
Yeah.
So yeah, making videos about photography has been my avenue. So like making courses and making Lightroom presets and making free educational videos on YouTube, lots of that.
And you're
But
doing that throughout high school, and when you leave high school, what's your mindset? Like, oh, high school's ending. What am I going to do next? And like, what's your step after that?
yeah, so through high school, I was still only making videos about skateboarding. Uh, and I go to NYU for business because I thought that maybe I'd want to work in the
Stern?
skate industry one day. And I just
Did you go
wanted
to Did you go to Stern?
I did go to Stern, yeah.
Yeah, I went to Tisch.
Oh, wonderful. Well, mortal enemies. Great to hear. But yeah, so Stern was a weird scene. It was trying to get
Yeah.
people to be basically corporate tools. If you want to go to Wall Street, Stern's the place to go. If you want to be entrepreneurial, like myself, maybe not the best choice. But I do like, I love math, and it wasn't that hard, and it gave me free time to explore my own creative interests. So yeah, midway through my first year of college, second year of college, I started making tutorials on photography just because I've always been doing it, and people were asking me questions about it, my audience. And I'm like, all right, let's just give this a whirl. And I found that I was actually doing it in a very different way than most people do. Most people who teach photography are over the age of 50, and they teach it in this very traditional, do this and this and this and put in the work, and then eventually you'll be able to do
You don't
this.
think that anymore, though, do you?
No, I mean, my first tutorial,
I
I'd
meant
say,
about most people that teach photography, because it seems like, there's 5 million people out there trying to teach photography on YouTube and stuff like that, are definitely not 50. And in, your influencers and, Sony creatives and Canon this, that, and, Fuji this. And, it's like, there seems to be a ton of people out there that are trying to create and teach now.
it's changed a lot and the space is way more youthful, but I think when I started making my tutorials, it was a lot more dry and there wasn't as much out there. This was 6, 7 years ago.
So you definitely, that's, when you're talking about, especially, what you were doing, you were trying, what your mindset was to kind of bring a fun energy to it and make it more lifeful and realistic for younger people. What was your mindset to make, how were you different at that point?
I would call it the millennials perspective or the Gen Z perspective even of teaching photography. And it's like, all right, let's do long exposures. And rather than working up the hours of effort that will take you here, I'm going to just show you how to wing it and do the very simple things. And you might not understand every single step because you haven't learned all the foundations. That's okay. I'm going to get you to accomplish this great photo and you're going to work backwards from there. And yeah, it was how can I teach these advanced concepts in 10 minutes to an absolute beginner? And I was still a beginner myself in many ways, which I think those who can't teach is there's an element of truth there. Those who are learning to do are some of the best teachers because they have their ear to the ground and they remember the process, where as pros who have been doing it for 10 years or 20 years, like they forget what it's like to not know what turning a certain dial on the camera is. And
Do you consider yourself self-taught?
for the most part, but I have had the fortune of like taking photo electives here and there. So I've taken a few classes.
So two questions on that. What was the most influential, moment with a professional that really kind of stuck with you to this day? And what, if you could go back, you wish, like, man, if someone just told me that as a beginner, it would have changed my, because now you're an educator and you have to think of that. It's like, no, you need to grasp this first because I didn't, and it would have helped me. It's like, what are those two aspects? What?
Yeah, I was studying in college and I took a photojournalism class, and my teacher introduced me to street photography. I was peripherally aware of it, but this was the first time that I really began to study the history of it. And my historical knowledge of photography is not great. And this is where I'm jealous of those who went to art school and had it crammed down their brains, because I have still gaping holes in my knowledge there. But yeah, to take a really classical route and of understanding it. And I learned about Alex Webb, and that blew his work blows my mind to this day. But yeah, seeing a lot of that, and Bruce Gilden, I learned about all the major greats, and that completely set a fire under my ass and got me thinking about photography in a new way. Because
Did you ever
previously,
see
I never really
the documentary Easy Street? I think it was Easy Street.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
New York City, it's about the New York City street photographers, and it's an incredible street. Incredible film. Definitely want to check out. Yeah, and if you could go back and give yourself one kind of beginning set of advice, what would it be?
Early photography for me, I would say,
because I know for me, it's like, for some reason that, the triangle of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, it never just really clicked. And if I had just spent really just the time understanding that, and how, slower shutter speed does this, higher speed shutter speed does this, ISO handles this, aperture handles this. If I understood that more at the beginning, I would think I would have developed quicker. And I think a lot of people just don't realize if you understand that, you understand photography pretty much. And how to take a picture, the mechanics of it.
Yeah. I think that, it would have been awesome if I started shooting street a little earlier. I think that young people, one of the biggest aspects of street beyond you and your own skill set is just you as a human. I love women street photographers because just being a woman has an effect on your relationship with the space and the people around you, versus being a man, versus being 10 years old versus 50-year-olds. I'd love to be a grandpa street photographer. Those dudes can get away with anything, And
it's sort of true.
Yeah, I think that being a kid would have been really cool to kind of experiment with that a little more. But I was definitely immersed in skate photography, a little too heavy. And I don't know, I'm
Which
grateful for
that
where I've ended
brings me
up.
to a good question. Is like, it's like you tend to think, we all hate labels as photographers. Oh, you're a street photographer, or you're this type of photographer. And the other day I was thinking, it's like, wow, if you label yourself as sort of a travel photographer, that gives you the kind of onus to do everything there possibly is. Because a travel photographer travels, they get to shoot people, they get to shoot places, food, this, that, and the other. But if you had to, like, that elevator pitch of describing yourself, what type of photography you do, what would it be?
I am a anti-label photographer. No,
See, I know that's the thing. We
no,
never want
my
to label
favorite thing.
ourselves.
I love street and documentary photography,
Yeah.
and I love skateboarding photography, but I also will never put myself into a box there because it's fun to shoot a portrait and it's fun to shoot a landscape, and I love everything. And as a photo educator, especially, I think it's really important to be diverse and involved in as many spaces as you can be.
Do you think because you kind of got started in the digital age of photography, would you still have a love for it if it wasn't digital? If you had to shoot film, do you think it would have still been the same?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a really technical mindset, and doing a lot of work with long exposures and all of that would have been 25 times more tedious. Like it was, especially being self-taught. The trial and error factor is huge and really helpful. So that was big. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure my work would have looked different, but definitely not contingent on the
I think
existence
this is a
digital
perfect place to
cameras.
dive into some of your work. So let's bring up some of your work and discuss it. Here, but one of the first pictures you sent me, and obviously it's skateboarding and everything like that. And you talked about long exposures and lights and all that kind of stuff. So where is this sort of in your career of photography? And tell me about the shot.
Yeah, so this was one of the coolest shoots I've ever done, to be honest with you. I got to make a commercial series for Canon. I was the creative director, I was the photographer, and I was the narrator of the video series. So it was a lot of hats, but I had a whole production crew behind me as I was shooting the shot with insane multiple C300s.
Just recognition.
And
I've done a bunch
yeah,
of
so that was a
Canon,
major moment in my career in the past. With photo education.
Well, I want to dive deeper into that. Where do you first get YouTube? You're doing great. Who's the first person to approach you? How do you get to that point where Canon comes to you? Are they the first ones to approach you? Did someone else approach you first? What was your first kind of sponsorship or job that's a big deal to just kind of Canon doing to get to that
I've worked
point?
with so many brands over the years. First camera company I think was GoPro. I just did a sponsored video for them with their new camera, and it was a sponsored YouTube video. It was like an influencer deal.
So at that point, when that GoPro comes to you, are you like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing? Or are you like sort of like, oh, that's cool? Well,
well, no, I was really excited, and I'd worked with enough brands where it was really, really exciting, but also I was in the space for sure. I invested all my money in GoPro. It was a horrible idea in 2015. It's now pretty much worthless. But I was excited, so that was fun. But I'd say in 2016, my agent gave me a connection with Canon, and they were just willing to lend me out some gear. And my agent told me, don't expect to ever make $1 from Canon. They will not pay. They're notorious for not paying. But if you want to rent out and test some gear and make YouTube videos about it, they're interested. And I was over the moon. This is acknowledgement from the camera company that not just I got started with, but what my dad got started with. We're a Canon family.
yeah.
So it meant a lot to us and me. And I didn't really expect that would ever go anywhere, I had no idea. And I tested out a couple other camera companies where started hitting me up to test their gear because I was making a lot of gear reviews. I was trying to be camera agnostic and just try everything, be super objective. And then a few months into making reviews that were doing pretty well on YouTube, Canon hits me up and they say, hey, through a marketing agency at that, they're like, hey, we'd like you to do a sponsored YouTube series for us. And it was with their M50, this little small.
Yeah, I remember the M50
camera.
Yeah,
great camera. I still love it and use it today. And that was insane. I really blew my mind to be recognized by Canon as a creator and not just as a reviewer. But it was definitely like in the influencer territory. Then they did in 2018, I believe, a workshop in New York, or like a Canon Portals was what it was called.
Yep.
And they asked me to give a talk or lead a few workshops. And I'd never taught live before at that point. So I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this for the first time. Canon, this is crazy. I don't know what to expect. But, I'm really comfortable with the camera and I love people. And I did two. I did one on street photography at nighttime, and I did one on skateboarding photography. And they both went wonderfully. It was super fun. I think I made a good impression with them. And yeah, so since then I've given a few talks for them around the country, which has been awesome. And then they approached me to do this skateboarding photography series for their new their new 90D, which was, branded, it's a super high shutter speed or frame rate shooting. So, great camera for shooting skateboarding. It's a phenomenal camera. So I got to make this series, and it was like an absolute dream come true.
Wow,
Totally
that's awesome.
crazy.
I want to rewind just a little bit, because you had said at this point your agent talked to you. How long have you had an agent? How did that come about? Where did you suddenly like, wow, I have an agent, or I need an agent? Did they find you? Did you find them? How did that come about?
Yeah, my agent actually reached out to me. This was in 2015 or so. I had a really crazy opportunity to work with Mountain Dew on a year-long partnership. And again, it's just all influencer stuff. This isn't photo agent. I don't have a photo agent. But yeah, it was a huge deal, and I needed some help with it. Brought on the agent, and we did quite a few work together for a few years. We're not working together as much anymore, but it was a really awesome relationship, and it was super helpful for navigating the influencer space. And yeah, I'm grateful for it.
And next, I'm going to bring up another photo of yours, and it's one of my favorites of yours. It's just that it's so poetic and so beautiful, and it really sums up a lot of the things I think you look for in a photo from what I've seen of your work. Tell me about this photo.
Oh, so this is the same exact shoot, and it was a dream shoot. So there's obviously going to be a couple from there, but it was just hire 5 incredible, basically pro skateboarders and take them to all locations you want to go to. So this is under the BQE in Brooklyn, and I just noticed that when they were all clustering together, these pigeons in one area. So I had Dylan, the skateboarder, go through a few times to get this perfectly framed shot. And after about 15 runs, we finally had this one sequence that really worked out.
Is this something you had been working on many times before, working with because I know, even if you know it, but it's sort of a reoccurring theme from your videos to your photo work. You do incorporate birds as one of the kind of things that's in your photos. And is that a conscious thing, an unconscious thing, or is it?
I photograph what's around me. I've never thought of myself as a bird photographer, but I guess I exist in New York City, and I'll take any elements of composition that I can get.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, I wouldn't call you a bird photographer, but it's an element, in sort of the composition sometimes you use. Even
this could be my foray into wildlife photography, Travis.
There we go. It happens right there. I mean, so this is, when you saw this photo, you're like, yes.
Oh yeah, it's a satisfying shot, right? I love the dramatic skateboarding push shot, and this is a cool thing.
Awesome. So tell me about this one. Obviously, you're using some light in this one.
Yeah. So this is the day before the last 2 images you've looked at, and this is in Lower Manhattan. And this is a cool kind of blend of everything I care about. So street photography, of course, is a great passion of mine. And we're actually at this popular skate spot in Battery Park. And yeah, this kid was taking an interest in it. And this guy is jumping over him with the ollie is a professional skate teacher. And he's so great with little kids. And he's like, oh, do you want me to to do an ollie over you. And the kid's like, oh, I'd love that. I'm like, oh, well, let's make it happen. So it was this kind of beautiful, everything came together. We started chatting with his parents and the kid got curious. And yeah, I try to incorporate any interesting kind of street element into my skate photography whenever I can. I don't know if I've included it in this set, but like one time I saw this guy walking around in a tiger suit. And I'm like, get over here. You're getting in my skate photo right now. It'll be great. And yeah, so, call it maybe a blend of street and.
Yeah, I mean, it says, I mean, just not only do you have this wonderful, kid smiling, just so happy in the perfect, little alley above him, and you captured the right moment, but you have this woman walking behind, on her cell phone, not oblivious to what's happening in front of her, and other people taking a picture the other way and missing something that looks like amazing shot right here. So there's all these other elements and the great use of light and stuff like that going on here. What kind of type of lights are you using here? And do you usually, are you someone that really kind of likes using, or you're like, I will use whatever, whenever, just to get the photo I want?
Yeah, I mean, these were shot with 2 Canon 600X speed lights.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I'll definitely prefer to shoot a skate photo with speed lights. But yeah, there's a time and place for lights, and I do definitely quite a bit of shooting without them too.
We'll talk about this one.
This was the next day. It was a 2-day shoot. I'm not a professional skate photographer. I don't want to pretend to be.
Yeah.
I love skateboarding. I love skate photography. But it's just a passion of mine. And I don't have a humongous portfolio of it. I shot a lot of it in high school and took a little break from it for a few years in college. And yeah, this has sort of been my renaissance of it.
So when you say you're non-professional skateboard photography, is that because you admire the other people so much and you what they're doing, or is it because you don't make your living from it? What diversifies, you saying I'm not a professional?
Well, in skateboarding, there's this like really hard line of pro and amateur that I sometimes still subscribe to, and I forget that if you make $1 doing anything, you're technically pro.
But you say that, I can tell you say that with sort of a respect, like I'm not a pro because of the people that actually probably do it.
Yeah, I mean, the true pros in my mind are the guys who are shooting for Thrasher, shooting for Skateboard Mag,
mm-hmm.
Shooting for all the skateboarding magazines with the top level pros who do it professionally. And like, I take a good skate photo, don't get me wrong. I'd like to think. But, I'm working with my friends, and occasionally I'll do a shoot like this where I'm working with friends of friends, it's still like pretty casual. So yeah, like this is all clustered together because I haven't had the like everything come together of great talent, great gear, great locations in a little while. And it's somewhat conscientious, and that skateboarding photography hasn't always been my top priority, but it's definitely a thing I do.
Yeah. Well, now this photo, was this something that you had envisioned, or is it something like I'm just going to play with, messing around with my camera and the settings? And what was this? Was it deliberate, or are you experimenting?
No, I mean, I love slow shutter flash shots. So you'll see a lot of those from me.
Yeah.
This is on my backyard half pipe, and yeah, really cool, interesting lighting. And I knew that this would be great I was actually demoing the panning feature on the 90D at the time, and it just,
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it all kind of came together.
So, I mean, you really play with motion in many different aspects of your photography, whether it be, slowing it down, speeding it up, playing with the, freezing motion, letting motion kind of, explore the frame. Is this a very conscious thing that you love doing, or is it something that, it developed over time and became part of your, toolbox? Or
yeah, it's definitely a conscientious thing. I love, yeah, I love long exposures. I think it's such a fascinating way to think about time and motion. And when you have something that you're speeding up while you're also slowing down time, like these images, it's such a crazy reckoning, which I love.
Having been on roads like this and just seeing this guy skateboarding there's something so satisfying and wonderful about this shot. Was this, were you just traveling out there and said, jump out there and I want to get this shot? Or was this something that he was like, I want to skateboard down this hill, and you shot it? Or how did this come about?
Yeah, I mean, this is like every skateboarder dreams of having a really great pushing shot of them.
Yeah.
So we're always looking for opportunities to do that. And I have so many different photos of pushing. But yeah, we were on a skateboarding and camping road trip. We were just finishing up in Big Bend, Texas, and we're headed up to Guadalupe Mountains. And we see this road, and we're like, oh my God, this is it. So yeah, we pull over. And if you zoom in on the ground, it's actually horrific. It's barely rideable. So, and I think that's probably the case for most of those like wanderlust pushing photos of like the road's actually not that great, but you know, fake push, whatever. It is what it is.
Once again, playing with that long exposure and light, and to get the shot during daylight hours is something you don't normally see. So tell me about this shot.
Yeah, I was in Big Sur with my ex-girlfriend, and we just caught a sunrise, and I loved the natural S curve like any photographer does. I also like my initial early days as a photographer. I'll give you the quick full spectrum. Started off with skate, and then I started shooting skate portraits, and then I started doing documentary of like the larger moments in skateboarding, which got me into street. And then I just had a landscape binge. And this is sort of the remnants of my landscape binge. I was like a filter dad for a little while. Like, you know how much dads love their like 10-stop ND filters? And like,
Yes, yeah.
I was the guy that would go hiking on these 10-mile hikes and bring like 25 pounds of gear, 3-4 big lenses, my DSLR, tripod, and 10 filters. I'm not that guy anymore, but I do like to carry around at least 1 or 2
No,
filters.
but it's funny that you bring that up, because I think, usually, and especially you as an educator, you can spot, and having time in as a photographer now, and myself as well, usually when people post photos or you're looking at photos, you can tell sort of what aspect, or if they're the beginning stages of their photography career, or later on, by what they're doing. Like if you're seeing someone do some crunchy HDR, you're like, you're pretty new at this. It's like, so you're like, oh, I'm playing with all. You can see what they're experimenting with, and obviously you have to experiment with all of that to get to where you're going and learn what to do, what not to do, what rules you can break, what but you have to know how to do it first, and that's the learning process. So for you to get to where you are, you have to have gone through all of that.
Definitely. Yeah, it's all part of the process, and like failure is super important.
So when you're teaching people and you see them doing this, how do you take an approach of, do you embrace it? Do you say, all right, this is good, but you might want to do this? How do you approach it? Like deep in your head, like, no, this is terrible. this is bad HDR, and you should probably not do this. Like, how do you approach that as an educator and talking? Because obviously, from your photos, you can see you're very empathetic. You love human beings and capturing emotion and movement and all of that. So how do you deal with that as an educator?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about HDRs, I say, well, let's do it tastefully. Let's not overdo it. And if it comes to doing any sort of cringe experimentation, if you have to take a photo of just the sunset, I'll say, well, all right, maybe have a little foreground in there. It's all just incremental, taking where people are at, where people are interested in, and helping them make it right for them. There's obviously no objective good, and I'm not going to push whatever that would mean on other people. It's more just marginal improvements and trying to demo what I'm into and make it as accessible and possible for other people as I can.
Yeah. All right.
Oh yeah, but that image was just with a 10-stop ND filter.
Oh well, yeah, I kind of figured. Yeah, during the daylight, you'd have to do something. Wonderful, and we go into the nighttime one.
Yeah, and every once in a while I'll sneak up onto a rooftop and do something like this. I don't know. This image to me I have mixed feelings about, because it's a pretty image, but it also feels kind of empty. I think that if you build a big portfolio of this, and they become more about the adventure than the actual photos sometimes.
Yeah.
But as a dude that casually like sneaks up on roofs, it's not as prolific or deliberate in many ways. But yeah, this is just
So this picture this is a result of because the rooftop culture of taking photos is a real one in New York, just like whether it be urbex or any type of that type of photography. Was this more of the adventure and you got this shot, or was it like, no, I'm setting out to do this shot?
I was doing a shoot for Google Pixel, at the time. And they had me I was trying to take all these experimental animations for them,
Right.
like street photography animations with like thousands of photos incorporated into one. And I sent them like a few of those, and I sent them one rooftop picture. And they
And that's
responded
what
back,
I loved.
"We want more rooftop pictures." I'm like, "All right, Google Pixel, you can have what you'd like." So yeah, this is, I casually brought my DSLR that day too and figured I'd take this. This is what came of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was up there to take a smartphone photo of the roof because
No, that's awesome.
that's what the internet likes.
And a shot like this, is this something that, did you know this person, or you're capturing a moment in New York, just that was there? Obviously, it's like there's some kind of connection between you and her, I would say, which is a friend or something.
No, this is a street photo. I didn't know
That's
her.
awesome.
This was Halloween, which is like one of the best days in New York to shoot. I
Yeah.
don't know what it's going to be like this year.
Are going to miss it, obviously. It hasn't happened yet, but
I think that Halloween could still be interesting this year, but we'll see. Anyway,
yeah.
I was shooting street and I noticed these girls. There was one other grape behind her, or a bunch of grapes in purple, and I noticed them like a block away from the subway. But the first thing that caught my eye was like, wow, they have horrible spatial awareness. They've got large costumes and they're bumping into everyone. This is hysterical. So I'm going to follow them and see what happens and pray that they will go down into the subway, because that would be hysterical. So I followed them for a block and a half, and then I see them head into the subway, and I'm absolutely elated. And I'm like, there is no way they're going to go through this turnstile. There's just no way. They're going to open up the gate, and it'll be boring. But I'm like, you know what? I gotta hope. So I follow them down. The purple grape girl goes through first. And I'm like, all right, well, there's no way now, she kind of got stuck. It was horrific. There's no way this green grape bunch is going to do it. But I'm gonna take the gamble. So I do my 275 gamble. I run ahead of them and swipe in and just wait and hope. And I figured she was going to open up the gate for her friend, but she did not. And this is the photo that came of it.
That's great. And you know what, when you're talking about street photography, a lot of it is, some people think being in the right place at the right time, but you had I think it also is being able to anticipate and position yourself in the right place. How often do you find, the percentages of one versus the other for yourself?
They're both definitely tools in the tool bag. And every once in a while, sometimes it is this really deliberative.
Because that's great foresight to go, you know what, I'm going to follow them. And if they go into that subway, I know there might be just an amazing shot to be had. And that's, that takes, having the foresight of knowing that and being able to position yourself in the right place to know that this may happen. That's very a deliberate, kind of thought process.
Yeah. And then sometimes you're camping, waiting for a moment. I'd like to think that most of my work is maybe a combination of the two, where even if I am camping, there is foresight and like deliberation that brought me to that point of expectation where I'm waiting for a certain thing.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful shot. And, I think, someone, if they could plan that shot, probably wouldn't have executed it as well as that one was.
Thanks, man. This was, I was doing a video that day called 12 Hours of Photo in the New York City subway system. And exactly what I did, I didn't leave the subway for 12 hours. And I went from Brooklyn to the Bronx to Queens, all over. And yeah, this was one of those moments in the morning where like just having a really fun interaction with it. Like, I like to interact with my subjects. Sometimes their reaction is what makes it interesting.
When you say interact, how are you, really kind of engaging with them and having that interaction? Is it just like kind of put up your camera, making a face, is it a comment? What kind of interactions? And I'm sure they're different in each time, but you must have some sort of kind of go through at this point.
Yeah, so I don't remember the exact ordering of this, but I know that it started with a wave to this kid who was already like this. They was just looking at me, and I took the photo and another wave, and then we're just making faces at each other. And then like I love to escalate, like Simon says, when you can't talk to the subject. So like I threw him a kick, like a jump kick. I don't know if this is after, but it was actually probably before the jump kick. I usually like to get a somewhat candid moment and then have my interaction. But yeah, sometimes they go hand in hand, and like some street photography purists will say that you shouldn't interact with your subjects at all.
Yeah, that was sort of my next question for you. That's a really good thing that you bring up there.
This is where I disagree with them, and that like I think that is contingent on the belief that you as a photographer don't exist. It's that you are not in this moment. You're just this passive like microcosm that you're not noticed. But the fact is, you have a body, you have a presence, you are affecting the moment no matter what. And sometimes it's actually more of an imposition to not say hi than to say hi. Like we want to talk about maintaining candidness and being natural, your avoiding of human interaction actually makes it less natural. So yeah, I don't think that there's a right way to do it necessarily. And maybe this isn't second wave street photography, whatever you want to call it.
No, I agree. A lot of purists it's like, oh, you really need to kind of be the fly on the wall, and as soon as you're kind of noticed, but unless you're using a long lens and hiding behind a garbage can, you're going to get noticed.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that it's just two different types of shots, and you either enjoy that one versus the other. But having a connection with someone is just as beautiful as kind of catching a candid moment. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous though, because there is a whole world where you transition into documentary. Well, there's documentary photography, which is pretty similar. Then there's street portraiture, and like that is wonderful in of itself. But I hate actually when street portraiture pretends to be street photography. If it's a posed photo and you claim that it's not natural, that sucks. So I think that there has to be a limit, or just an acknowledgement of when you've crossed that line. And it's sometimes a gray area, but I do interact with my subjects, and there is sometimes a fluidity there. And yeah, this is a photo of a moment that I share with this kid.
And this next one here, where are you here? And tell me about this photo.
This was a little town in Spain. I was on a little solo road trip, just driving around, and it's kind of it. Kind of a simple photo, but a nice
moment, yeah. Especially with the sun coming in over those mountains. This one. Was this one of those ones you camped out, or just, to get all those colors kind of there brilliantly? Tell me about it.
This is one of my favorite street photos I've taken, actually.
Yeah.
And this was in Mexico City in a market. The markets are crazy. There's just infinite energy and a million things happening at all times. And I was camping out because I knew that this lighting was insane. And this is just one of those moments where everything comes together. This is my Alex Webb photo.
It is incredible. I mean, with the negative space and the shadows, and that yellow pop, and his yellow shirt and the yellow background. It's just it comes together in such a beautiful and satisfying way.
Thank you. I just wish more grown men ate popsicles. A better, more visually stimulating place, especially if the popsicles are the same color as their shirts.
Now, did you kind of like instruct him on this one to play with it, or is this a happy accident?
Okay, so again, like no instruction, but happy accident for sure. I noticed this is in Israel and Tel Aviv, in a market, because markets always have the energy. Yeah. And I just love this composition, and I was just sort of camped out waiting to see what would happen. And this guy's a construction worker, and I'm like saying what's up to them, and like can't really communicate that much. But after a few minutes of staying there and like, being friendly to them, but also them being like, what the hell is this guy doing? He gave me what is this? And that was the moment. So, I'm definitely like playing a role in it, but I feel like there's enough distance where it's still street photography. And I know that also the purists would never want to reveal these behind the scenes stories of how these moments came to be. I'm just trying to be transparent because I believe in photo education. And
I think they're important, and they don't change the beautiful and what you captured. And anyone that kind of says it does is, you kind of have to dismiss that, because anyone does not go out and get these photos. You have a style and a way to get your photos, and they're beautiful and they're well thought out. And for people not to admire what you're doing, it's a sad state of affairs, I think, and a world that we don't want to live in.
Man, I mean, I appreciate that, Trav, but also like I get a lot of these takes from like the folks at the New York City Street Photo Collective, and they're just like, I love those guys. They've totally changed my perspective on street photography.
Yeah.
And they are mostly purists, and it's super inspiring. And it's helped me like solidify a lot of my own perspectives and differences. But I've got nothing but love for those dudes who make excellent work.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
It's just a different world.
but you're looking at work on its own merit, not oh, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you, you know, you're looking at the work and saying, wow, that's beautiful work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool to have constraints, and they are a lot of them shoot with a very particular style that's awesome, and yeah, I think that's a cool world to be in, and this is another world sometimes.
So you have this shot, which actually you've had movement to. So tell me about this and what you're doing here and how this came about.
Yeah,
Very cool.
thanks, man. Yeah, this is a fun thing that I've been doing lately. I'm still trying to figure out what I should be calling them. People suggested I call them Zoomers or street boomerangs, but yeah, it's a street photo boomerang essentially. And yeah, just shooting with a high speed shooting and kind of moving the camera around to find these moments.
So how are you creating that? Is it how are you creating the movement in the video or GIF in this? Is it multiple shots put together? Is it video that you're using? How are you creating this?
Yeah, just high sequence images and then stitched together in Premiere. So turned into a movie, but yeah, it's just photos. Yeah.
Let's take a look at another one then, because they're really cool. And you know, obviously, you know, when you're looking at the social media and YouTube and all that stuff, you know, it's like there's a lot of still pictures out there. You're adding a different element to it and really kind of being creative, which is, you know, I think what makes you and different than a lot of other people.
Thanks, Matt. Very kind of you to say. Yeah, so this has been an experiment that I'm still definitely figuring out and trying to understand. And you know, it's like.
So how long is it taking you to create this? You know, while someone's there oblivious to what you're doing.
I got about, you know, so my camera is a loud DSLR, and it's like a kind of thing. So I got like maybe 4 or 5 until like her friend was laughing as I shot this to her, you know, the entire time. Yeah, it took like 3 or 4 tries, and I figured I had it at that point. And then eventually she noticed me, and I said, "What's up?"
What camera are you using for this?
I've been using a 6D Mark II for a while. But I'm ready to go mirrorless. I think it's.
Are you gonna, you know, step up to an R6 or an R5 or?
I will.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly interesting cameras and a lot to play with. You know.
it's what I've been waiting for, actually. Honestly, I haven't really taken a picture in like a month and a half because I've been working on this book, and but yeah, as soon as I get back into it, I'm gonna need. But yeah, as soon as I get back into it, I'm gonna need this camera.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing what you're doing, especially with what Canon's doing with their lens mount and some of the different lenses that are coming out is really interesting, and especially that 70 to 200 little smaller version of that lens is I think pretty cool.
Dude, yes.
So here we go. We're looking at I guess rooftop.
Yeah. So this is the onset of my latest work.
Yeah.
And this has been my entire quarantine. So let's. I'll jump off where I began and say that, yeah, so basically I realized that this was life for the next few months. New Yorkers were going to reinvent their lives on top of the rooftops, and I wanted to be there to document it. This is a story of, it's documenting like life, it's community, it's me actually getting to know my neighbors, and yeah, it was sort of a social and anthropological and artistic experiment, really. I made the roof into my life, basically. You know,
so what was the catalyst that sort of kicked this idea off? Was it, you know, you just started shooting it and went, oh wait, I got something here, or was the idea came before, or you know, how did it come together?
Yeah, like the first Saturday of quarantine, when I was up there with my neighbors that I invited up and just looking around. You know, I've always been a big people watcher, obviously, as a street photographer, and just seeing, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is going to be a rooftop renaissance, and I need to document this and see what happens. So yeah, immediately, like first day of quarantine, basically, I'm out there shooting, and I had been doing it ever since, going up every single day from like 5 p.m. until dusk, if not later, from hanging out with my new rooftop friends. And, you know, it started off as a photo experiment, and then it became like my entire social life too. You know, these are the only people I was seeing as I was quarantined alone. And yeah, so I now, you know, 20,000 images later, am turning this into a photo book. And do you mind if I give you the spiel now, or?
Well, let's. We definitely. I want people to know about the Kickstarter and all that. But let's talk about before we get into it. Let's kind of go into the process of getting these photos, because I mean, it started off on your rooftop, you're saying, and then are you going to other rooftops, or like how are you finding these moments? You know, and because you have so many of these beautiful moments, and obviously enough to make a book. But how is this all coming together?
Yeah, so this was all shot from my rooftop. I'm really fortunate. I live in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and
Because you got a lot of neighbors on rooftops, man.
so yeah, dude, a ton. It's crazy. Well, my roof is a row house. My building is a part of a series of row houses. It's 16 buildings long that share one roof. So I have the length of 1.5 football fields to go across. So every day I'm walking miles back and forth in circles, kind of scouting and prancing around basically. And my policy was like, yeah, this is about community and documentation. And there's a beautiful trust that the community has to put in me to do these photos, to work on this process. So I was saying hi to everyone. Like if I ever saw a new person, I would photograph them first and foremost, and then I'd say what's up, and I'd offer them their images, I'd tell them about the project, and I'd just like get to know everyone. So I became a cool intermediary of like helping forge community and introducing new people and encouraging. Anytime anyone came up on my actual roof, I'd introduce them to whoever else was up. And I was just running around, and it was a really fun experience.
So let's kind of break down this one photo, because I mean, someone might just kind of gloss by this photo, and they really shouldn't, because was he actually standing and you shoot this, or did you guide him to there, or like what? Because you look at these pipes, him standing up singling, the long, you know, the gutter down the building, the flute in his hand, all of this is so graphically incredible that it's all in one photo, and it's a rooftop photo and a street photo, and it's one of those ones you could say, well, they had to have planned this, but you know, it's incredible shot.
This is candid, actually,
which makes it that much more amazing.
Yeah, they were just running. You know, people were reinventing their lives up there, right? And people were experimenting so much in every possible direction. And yeah, this person was running back and forth and standing on the parapet of the roof and the fire or the chimney, and yeah, playing what was a beautiful flute solo. And you know, of course they noticed me, and I said hi, and they continued to play. Got a few more photos, and yeah, then I got to talk to them and send them their email and get permission to use this image and all that.
So are you just like full on shouting? Or are you like holding up like letters, or
Oh
like how are you communicating?
So all right, here's how it works. I am the rooftops that are one away from me, that are one building away. I could yell to them. If it was windy, it was tough. But I could have conversations with them even, and I did. I made a lot of friends actually on this roof. 2 rooftops away is when the clusterfuck territory begins. There's too damn far to yell to. Yeah. So like to connect with one girl, I actually used my friend on this roof to go through her to go pass the message along to one roof over. I should give them my Instagram, and then I could have a video call with them.
I hope you got some BTS video of all that.
Yeah, I do actually. And then there's this one girl or one guy who was doing graffiti. This really beautiful piece on his building, and it was 2 roofs away. And I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. I'm getting great photos of this, but you know, I'm not a narc. Like I'm not gonna like rat this dude out if he's not okay with it. So, and I had no intermediaries to talk to him. So I basically just spent like 10 minutes screaming as loud as I've ever screamed my entire life. Never screamed this loud. And it was hard to get his attention, but eventually I did, and we managed to communicate to meet at the deli in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I got to say what I love the most about this is during, remember Hurricane Sandy, and everybody was, posting the pictures of all the devastation and how, although, it destroyed New York and Staten Island, all these, houses just destroyed and stuff like that. I went out and shot a series of how there were pockets of light at night because all the blackout in New York and all around. I shot, like pizza places that had a generator on, or, a food truck, and the rest of New York City was all blacked out except for those little pockets of light. And what you've done here is found the beauty in what is a very difficult time for people, and to celebrate life and that beauty. And I think this is such an incredible anthology and archive of photos for the future of this time period. And that's what makes this work so beautiful, important, and why I was definitely one of the investors on the Kickstarter for the book, because I want this. It's a hard enough time to look back on, but when you can look back on it and see the beauty in these difficult times, that makes it a lot easier to deal with. And was this something that you set out to do, or is it just like, wow, I really kind of like, no, it's a rooftop pictures and I like what's happening here. But what was your kind of thought process on shooting something during COVID?
Yeah. Well, first, Trav, that's super kind of you to say, and I really appreciate that. Second, so I am a big lover of anthropology and sociology, and I've been reading quite a bit about it, particularly urban anthropology. And when I saw this on day one, I'm like, duh, this has to happen. I don't know what this is going to be. And I was photographing for the archives from day one, basically, where like anytime anyone came up on the roofs doing anything within my eyesight, which is, hundreds and hundreds of people, I took their photo. Even if they were 3 rooftops away and they'd be super small, it's fine. And eventually I got a super telephoto lens. So I was shooting at 800 eventually, which is great. Basically, then everything, I could see someone picking their nose from a mile away. But anything I saw, I photographed, because I'm like, well, there's going to be evolution of this, and I want to capture the change. So I'm laying out the groundwork now. I'm going to see how this goes. And I never had an expectation of like, what will this become? Like, obviously, every photographer hopes that they will, find their next great project and whatever. But I didn't know if this would be that, or if it'd be a bunch of people doing some weird things on the roof and casual move on to the next thing kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a really fascinating cultural moment for New York City, for the world, obviously. And I see this as a beautiful silver lining of community that actually emerged during a time when most people were shut in. And it was a luxury to have this roof. This is what kept me sane through a very difficult time. I definitely would have gone totally nuts without it.
Yeah.
And it's it's a homage to that. It's an homage to the community that formed, and the connections that is like Bushwick community actually.
Is this the work continuing? Are you still shooting this, or you put it to rest and moved on, and now it's about compiling the book and
Yeah, I had to move on. Toward the end of May, the rooftops slowly quieted down as people started going out a little bit more.
Yeah.
There was a time when you weren't supposed to leave the house, and no one was. But eventually they were opening parks up again.
Right.
My park was closed intermittently. And they're opening up parks again, and then outdoor dining and so on. But yeah, and then of course with the Black Lives Matter movement, that was kind of the moment where the series really just moved on.
Right.
People started taking the subway for the first time, or some people still haven't, but a lot of folks did to go to those protests. That was my impetus for taking the subway finally.
You see, here are birds again.
Yeah. Okay. I'll follow the tiger. What can I say? Sometimes people get in my shot. I don't want them in my shot, but they end up there.
It's a beautiful shot. And this one, is this part of the series, or was this something someone that you knew that was doing carrier pigeons and stuff like that?
Yeah, so on top of my roof, there is a pigeon coop with 1,000 pigeons. This is Rick. These guys were kind of the foundation for the project.
Oh, wow.
They're incredible. They're Bushwick locals. He and his friends have all, lived in Bushwick for the last 50 years. And they're up there every single day, rain or shine, flying these birds. And they know the neighborhood like no one else does. So, I spent so much time, hundreds and hundreds of hours on the roof throughout this project, maybe thousands, I don't know. And yeah, a lot of the time was spent drinking beers with these guys, just chatting. And especially the series was really crazy at first, and it was just this like nonstop crazy moment over here. We're on the other side, crazy moment over here. New person is giving birth on this roof, like, whatever. But as it slowed down, it became a lot less about the project. I always had the camera on me, but I went from getting 10 crazy moments a day to maybe one, maybe two.
Right.
And the rest of the time was just being out there, looking around, waiting. And I spent a lot of time befriending these guys. They're really great dudes. And yeah.
One of the things that is very apparent in your photography is your use of composition, lines, and filling the frame and stuff like that. How much of that is conscious? Or do you crop at all? Did you get back and or was this frame and this is pretty much right out of camera? And how long did it really? Was it something this was just kind of natural, or is it something you constantly work at to kind of say, I'm looking for my frame? Because when you're doing action shots like that, to frame something the way you are, you only have a split second to get that. How much of that is conscious or not?
I'm not afraid to crop, one.
Yep.
And I also love perspective adjustment to straighten up my lines. I'm pretty anal about that, actually.
Yep.
But,
which is a great feature in Adobe, if people don't know. And that's how
yeah.
you and I met through Adobe and working with Adobe.
Fantastic feature. Yeah. But it's I think about photo education, like getting as many weapons in your photographic arsenal as possible, and then pulling them out when they need to be. And sometimes it is on the fly and you have a second, and other times you have all the time in the world to think about the shot and then frame it up, and then there's a moment you don't want to miss. But yeah,
I mean, some of these are just so painterly and such wonderful just moments in life, and I find them very calming and relaxing and restorative, in humanity, which is a beautiful thing and very difficult nowadays. And for you, was this sort of? Did you find that when you were shooting at? Was it just to keep yourself busy, or was it this was very therapeutic and needed at the time?
This project became my life. It brings me so much joy. Community is really important. I love to organize groups of people and bring people together and anything in that realm. And I love meeting my neighbors. And this was basically just a fantastic excuse to meet all of my neighbors. And now, when I leave the house, I see someone without fail that I know. And it's fantastic. And these people have been really supportive of the project, which has been incredible. And it's just been I care so deeply about this, and even if I wasn't making a book, like I wouldn't have hesitated to do this project still.
Yeah.
I didn't know it'd become a book. I really was just curious and inspired, and I needed something to do,
Was there a rooftop moment that really kind of stands out to you, or really because I can't believe that happened, or I saw that, or that I experienced that, or that was a really special one from all of these that you took?
There's so many, man. I think the most special ones were like the evolutions. Like, I guess like fun moments. Like I got flashed. That was cool. That's in the book. But like the more special ones are ones like watching a father who slowly introduced his family onto the roof and his dog. And it started off with just him and his brother-in-law just hanging out, and then he started taking his dog up for walks, and then he unleashed the dog and let the dog walk around free. And this is a roof with no guarded edges, so it's like watching the dog explore that. And then he brings up his daughter and his wife, and they start picnicking, and she's very tentative. And then it moves on to the point where the daughter is running around, they're playing tag, they're flying kites, like and watching this truly the evolution of culture and happen in such a microscopic period of time was riveting to me and so beautiful. And the fact that these people were trusting me to document it and let me stare at them for an hour and be shooting for half that time waiting for the right moment, like the fact that they were willing to let me do that is wonderful. And they put a lot of trust in me. And
did pretty much everybody kind of like let you do your thing, or did you have any moments where like, hey, don't
definitely some contentious moments. Some people loved the project and were all for it. Others flicked me off and told me to never photograph them again. And that was part of my policy, is that if you don't want me to photograph you, no sweat. Like you just say so, and I won't, or I'll photograph you and I'll never share the images. I have a few people like that. Or you're gung-ho about it. And there's a lot of navigation of this and figuring it out over time, but consent was like a really important part of this. And there are definitely a few images I wish I could put in the book, but I'm not going to because of that
I think this is one of those wonderful moments, just two people out reading. It's such a wonderful moment.
Thanks, man.
The concerned human was like, "Oh my God, you're flipping a kid around the rooftop with no edge."
Yeah, but they spent hundreds of hours up there too. They were always up there when I was. And this was Marco, actually, the man I was talking about. With his
I
dad.
figured this was one of those shots.
And yeah, I've been so in my head about just like making this book and marketing it and so on and so forth. I haven't like taken a long time to like really dwell on these images and these stories.
So are they cleaning the rug or cosplaying?
Some say the two go hand in hand.
Great moment. This one is
okay. So this
like
is
an iconic New York picture.
This is not a real photo, actually. This is a composite, and
That's
I'm not
great.
actually gonna. I don't think it's gonna go in the book because of that. I just thought it'd be fun to make as an experiment.
It is. It's great.
Yeah.
It's
so
fantastic.
that was the other thing. Like as far as the documentarian side of things goes, like there are some buildings where I have someone who's leaning out of almost every single window over the course of 3 months. Anytime I saw someone, I have it. So like, this was one of those buildings where I got more and more. I'm like, oh wow, I can actually put this together now. And the guy on the right is actually one window over to the right, but everything else is actually true to form, which I think is like a really fun story to think about in terms of these moments. There's so much shared space, and there's so many things that happen in the same very, very tiny space at all times. And even though these people aren't always there at the same time, they're always living their lives feet away from each other. And this is like the one intersection that probably occasionally happens. And it's that reckoning with thinking about urban life. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a great composite, and it's okay because you know what, all these did happen in that space, and they're all real moments. You just chose to intersect the time together in one photo by putting a composite together, and it makes it very powerful. So I think we got something else here.
Driving to the show and I scan the radio, but there's nothing on that makes me feel like dancing. Wind in the trees, but it won't rustle the leaves. And I can't stop daydreaming about crashing. In due time we can think of all of these things, but for now, if you don't mind, I'll take a load off my feet. 'Cause tonight we've got everything that we need, so let's take a moment, we'll try to enjoy the breeze.
I'm surprised 5 million companies haven't approached you to try and use this in some kind of campaign.
Yeah, a few have, but I've turned them all down. I don't want any sort of corporate influence on this project.
Yeah. It is, like I said, it kind of encompasses everything that I was talking about of the heartfelt, and compassion, and shows you and your love for the city and love for people, and it's a beautiful, beautiful testament to that.
Thank you, man. That video still warms my heart. And these are all my friends now, and it really is a beautiful, beautiful, crazy happening. And also I'll mention that on the realm of not working with corporations on this, I also I'm donating all the profits from this book to Doctors Without Borders because they're doing great work fighting COVID. And also, when COVID is eventually a thing of the past, they will continue to do great work, but I don't want to profit off of this project.
That's beautiful.
Doesn't feel right. And what kind of scumbag wants to profiteer off the pandemic? So I figured this is a really cool opportunity to, raise money for a fantastic cause, but also put out my first photo book that I've always, it's a dream project of mine. And yeah, I'm so unbelievably excited that it's finally happening.
Well, so am I. I think we have that was it, right, on the stuff you sent me?
Sounds about right.
All right, so now we just talk. All right, cool. I can stop this share. So let's talk about like where you are in all this, your mindset. How is going through all this, from the very beginning when you realized this is not going to be like the flu, like they said, and we're going to have to quarantine to this point? Did you go through dark periods? Did you go through, like, how is your mindset, and dealing with this?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely insane. I was never. A lot of people had their head in the sands. I was sort of the doomsdayer from day one, buying all kinds of extra equipment mid-February, warning my friends to do the same
Yeah.
because I saw this coming and I knew it would be quarantine, and I didn't think it'd be 2 weeks. I knew it'd be for a long time. I didn't expect this long, but yeah. So I was prepared in a sense, but of course, no one can prepare for what is the psychological turmoil that can come from such a difficult time. But in general, I was very fortunate. I had my dark moments, obviously, and it was tough. It was lonely. It was confusing. But the roof really did keep me sane. These are my friends, and I got to have real inhuman interaction with people and maintain social distance and have access to an outdoor space, which is something that's super rare in New York City. And this changed it for me. There are certain things. Yeah, the pandemic. Talking about the pandemic is such a tough conversation.
It's tough, especially when you think of, it's like I saw this funny meme the other day, and it was like God talking to his angels or his people, and it was it's like, oh, did you finish the events for the 20s? He's like, the 20s? I thought you meant 2020. So like, he packed all of the decades events into 1 year, which it feels like, if you look at, like, this has felt like a decade of what we've gone through, from COVID to politics to Black Lives Matter to the weathers to the hurricanes. I mean, just like there's so much happening within this 1 year. It's like sort of mind-boggling. And you put all that upon with a economy and people having to quarantine and losing jobs or housing and unemployment. It's like, how much more can you pile on? And it's the endurance of everybody trying to find their way through this is unbelievable. And each one of us has a different story to tell. And as photographers, it's like, I think it's so important because we add to the archives of this period that's going to obviously be looked at for centuries to come. It's an incredible time. And for you, like, what did you kind of like? Was it like, were there times like it seems like you kind of just embraced, like a lot of us, like, oh, no, I'm just going to work harder and do other things instead of like, I'm going to just disappear.
Yeah, I mean, I was really engaged in this project, and it took up a lot of my time because I was making videos about it. I was doing all the photos. I was doing a lot of writing about it too. There's a big written component of this too that I haven't really talked about yet. It's like all the anthropological studies of understanding what this new emerging roof culture is like and what it'll become, what it was. So yeah, I mean, this took up my time, which is really great. And besides that, I was cooking a ton. I was skateboarding a ton.
You didn't go through the sour bread phase, did you? Everybody making sourdough bread?
I unfortunately didn't. I'm still buying my bread like an absolute sucker. Do you make sourdough bread?
I didn't. But I definitely have been cooking a lot with different tools. From Instapasta sous vide machines to my big smoker outside and my grill. Like, yeah, no, I've definitely been playing.
Sounds like we both. I would say if you didn't make sourdough bread, we both wasted our quarantines.
I know. I should have come out on top of that one, but yeah, I didn't. So let's talk about. I know we obviously you did so much with YouTube and education and stuff like that. And one of the great things that I've seen you do is actually kind of put a camera on your camera and show people how you're going street photography. How did that come about? And for you, is teaching something you just have to do, or is it giving back? Why do you teach?
So the transition of my YouTube channel from skateboarding to photo happened gradually, but the reason being, I had this, what I like to call my, what was it? digital actualization process where I realized that making entertaining skate videos isn't that fulfilling, or it's fine, but a million people are doing it. Making high quality educational videos is the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. You know, it's helped build passions, build careers, and build, you know, avenues for expression for these people. And the stories that I get from my subjects or my students is incredible. You know, it's like, wow, okay, I'm actually making a difference in their life. And I think about how photography and cameras have changed the course. They've become my life, and how the thought of giving that to others is incredible. So that's sort of why I transitioned hard into photo my sophomore year, junior year. I went fully in on it in college. And the POV stuff is really just because I bought a 360 camera. I was curious to see what I could do with it. I tried taking street photos with it, found it to be a cumbersome process, and the tech wasn't quite where I wanted it yet. I also think that 360 content's not there yet, but 360 cameras used for 2D is awesome. And the POV for recording my street photography process has been really fun. And I was doing a lot of that on TikTok. People were really enjoying seeing the process, and I like to show it. I think it's like the most, it's great education is what it is. And I love that.
So having success and really kind of finding what you were going to do at a very young age, did you find a lot of people that were, you know, had an animosity or treated you differently, like, oh, he's too young, or he shouldn't be able, you know, he shouldn't, what does he have to teach me? Did you find, you know, obviously you have a huge crowd of people that embrace what you do, but was there a flip side to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, there will always be people that hate you on the internet, and that's okay. And I'm still kind of figuring out what my work is, what my style is, and I'm 24. Still, there's a lot to be evolved through this process.
I didn't find photography until about 7 years ago. You know, that was in my 40s. So, you know, it's like, you know, I in terms of, you know, where I am in my career, you're further along than I am. I'm just older.
I don't know about that. I mean, we're all doing our own thing, and I've fallen into this route. But yeah, I like to think that my work speaks for itself, and that even if I'm not the best photographer, I am a pretty good teacher. I take pride in that. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
What really kind of motivates you, like when you get that camera? Is it emotional, intellectual? Like what is it that drives you that moment to, like, this is the time to hit that trigger, you know, the shutter?
Yeah, my philosophy on photography is that, like, I'm not the camera's just a tool for me to experience the world and to indulge in my curiosity. So, like, before quarantine in January, I was on this like 6-week solo road trip through the South, and I was just like, all right, well, let's like deep dive into Southern culture and see what this is all about. So, like, I'm gonna use my camera to convince a monster truck driver, professional driver, to let me come photograph Monster Jam. I did that. You know, did a lot of street photos, took his portrait, hooked that up. I'm gonna go photograph a rodeo and a stock show. Did that. Snuck in with the press pass that I shouldn't have earned. That was sick. I spent hours in diners in small towns talking about what is local diner culture with these regulars. That was really incredible. I learned so much about diners are like an institution that basically serve as senior care in a really crazy way. Anyway, the camera is an excuse for me to indulge in my curiosities for the world. It lets me get into places I wouldn't get to go, to talk to people I wouldn't get to talk to, and do things I wouldn't get to do. And it started even like as a kid when I was skateboarding. I got to, because I was the skate photographer in the crew, I was hanging out with the best dudes in DC. And I'm good at skateboarding, don't get me wrong, but I'm not that great. I'm fine. But I was hanging out with the best dudes because I became involved in this. And like, I think that it's kind of, that's been the trajectory of my life ever since, hanging out with the best dudes and me just happening to have a camera and being accepted because of that, which I appreciate.
In life, we all kind of get pieces of advice, whether it's from our parents or whether it's from our career or, you know, someone that we look up to. What's something that kind of sticks with you throughout your life that not only you would tell your kids, but or anybody? It could be photography related or anything that one of those things that instantly, like, I live by this advice and I want to share it with you? Because one thing I remember, and I've said this on many episodes, is like, I remember my dad just saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, listen more than you talk. And like, well, that makes a lot of sense actually to me. It's like one of those things that kind of resonates throughout my life.
That's really good. Work philosophy. I wish I had as catchy an answer as that, but I've just grown up around a lot of people who have really interesting work relationships of like, some work too hard, some don't work enough, and figuring out ways to avoid the rat race, not working too hard, separating work from your life, and
well, I'm going to change it a little bit and go into, like, one of the questions I was asked someone asked me in an interview once was, what advice do you have for a young photographer? And my answer was like, it wasn't, like, go get this or do this or study that. It was like, if you don't wake up every single day and inexplicably have to, without any, like, it is a part of your soul burning, have to take that picture and want to do it every day, whether it's a good day or a bad day. Go find someone that does. Go find something in your life that makes you that happy. What kind of advice would you have for a young photographer?
My advice is always to just indulge your curiosities. So if you're trying to force, if you're new to photography and you're not even photographing things that you like in the first place, you're not doing 2 things that are new and difficult and weird. Start with something you love, whether it be bikes or cooking or whatever it might be, and photograph that and see how it expands and go from there. And I don't know, I don't want to say that you have to be like, you can be a work to live kind of person, and photography can be a tool for you, and that's okay. Maybe you do weddings because you love them. Maybe you do weddings because they pay the bills. And right. I think it's really important to like set barriers, back to this whole work-life balance of like knowing how to keep a healthy relationship with your passions. And, monetizing them is cool. Sometimes you don't want to. And sometimes it's really great to keep them pure. When I stopped making skateboard videos, I'm still a sponsored skateboarder, I will say. But like, I just film my artistic videos here and there. For the most part, I don't make that many skateboarding videos anymore. And when I stopped, it gave me so much more love for the activity. And so like, don't worry about whether you become a professional photographer that makes all the money, or you have to work a corporate job, or work as a waiter, or whatever it might be. Like, it's all okay. And sometimes it's beautiful to have distance. And I don't think that was good advice, but I was rambling and I agree with everything I said. So
if it's from the heart and it's what you would, tell someone, I think that's the most important thing. It's like, it's like, this is a hard enough life. If we have to work every day, you should enjoy it. And I feel very lucky that, I've had a lot of reboots in my career. I started out in film and TV and I found it wasn't for me, and was able to change to, owning nightclubs and bars, and that kind of almost destroyed me. And, in terms of just happiness and not being happy. And then I was able to find photography, but I was able to take those risks. I was able to reboot myself. And a lot of people find themselves stuck like with family and obligations and stuff like that, and can't take that kind of risk. And I don't have advice for that. And I don't know how to say, but I know that it is so important to, the great saying is like, if you find something you love, you never work a day in your life. I'm like, that's just not true. You actually work twice as hard, but you love doing it. It's just like, it's like one of those things. So I don't think there's a simple answer, and it's a very, just like everything, there's no black or white. It's lots of shades of gray. And for you, is it, it's like, what's next for you? Is there something that, like, you're like, well, I haven't done this and I'm dying to do it. And also, like with COVID right now, is there something like, man, I miss this so much and I can't wait till it returns to some sort of normalcy? And what has changed the most that, like, you miss the most at the moment? Dance parties. I know. Isn't that insane? Like, having been a club owner, knowing all my club friends that own nightclubs that have been closed since March, it's such a different world, like that. They've been closed and nobody's sitting in these clubs dancing.
All right, I'm going to seriously answer both questions at the same time.
Yeah.
It's the last one first, and say one of the best pieces of advice I've ever got was just say yes to things. Just the yes man theory, basically.
Yeah.
And be open to any opportunities, try things out. And to answer your question of what's next? I have no idea. And that's because I really do just like, I mean, I have a million projects I'm always working on. I always have like, 5 side projects that I'm really involved in. And I never know when one will become the main project. You know, this was just a hobby that I was doing while I was making a course on social media marketing, right? Like whatever. And now this has become my main project. And like my career talking about all of these verticals, and I know the timeline got kind of obfuscated because we were talking about a bunch of different things, and it probably got confusing, but it's confusing because there were a million things happening at all these times, and there never was this like straightforward path. And I didn't see myself ending up in photo education or now making a book that maybe will make, who knows what kind of pivots this will be. But generally, I just like to work really hard at what I'm doing. I don't need a large plan. I just want to make great work. I don't believe in like 5-year plans or 10-year plans, or I don't even have a 1-year plan. You know, I'm making great work, or the best work I can make. It's hopefully great. And of course I have a long plan for this book, but like, I'm also just riding this wave and seeing what will happen and trying to take it as far as it can possibly be taken. And then just being open to what's next, but I don't know.
So last couple questions I always kind of close these interviews with before we get to our closing speed round. Was there a moment that you just kind of went, oh my God, I can't believe I get to do this? That was a highlight so far of what you've done. Like you're sitting there like, I cannot believe I'm actually doing what I love, getting paid to be here, and I'm here doing this.
The cannon shoot blew my mind. That was probably my biggest professional accomplishment as a photographer up until this book.
Next question is, and you've kind of shown it in your book, but is there something recently that you've seen that gives you hope in humanity in the future, and or made you smile or laugh, that just kind of gave you hope recently? Any
sort of New Yorker connection, just, I mean, yes, on the roofs, I've talked about this already too much, but sharing a laugh with a stranger on the street is the most beautiful thing in the world. And it's happening again. People are not afraid to look you in the eye anymore. And, you know, with a little bit of distance, share experiences. And that's like one of the most important parts of urban living. And I think just healthy community, and with community, you know, happiness. So.
Yeah. So I asked this one question of everybody, and it on the most personal and spiritual level and not a technical level, what is photography to you?
Photography is a means to experience the world.
And personally to you, like photography, like if you couldn't do photography, what would you do?
I don't know. I have a lot of weird.
Fuck you for asking that. I'm always going to do photography.
I mean, I like to organize social events. I make a lot of like scavenger hunts for my friends and weird social experiment dinner parties. I have like a million bizarre restaurant ideas. Nice. And then, you know, entrepreneurial ventures. You know, photography, and we're talking a lot about photo as an art form, but photo as a business is a whole nother realm that I'm also very focused on. Yep. And building up courses and passive income. And
would that be one of your biggest advices? Is so you did go to business school, and you know, having that fundamental of business school makes you probably, because everyone, you know, there are a lot of great photographers out there, but they're not successful because they're not good business people.
I have this friend who is an incredible photographer. He's out shooting every day for like 12 hours, walking 25 miles, whatever. He's fantastic, and his work shows that. And I get out to shoot once a week, twice a week, like not as much. Sometimes I'll shoot every day for a week. And like with this project, every day for 6 months, or 3 months. But I mean, yeah, most of my days are spent staring at a computer screen, making things. And we're like making things around the things that I've already made. And yeah, there's a ton of back end work that's going into what I do. And who knows where we'll end up. Maybe he'll end up at the MoMA and I'll end up slinging internet ads for Kickstarters. I don't know. But like, it seems like, putting a lot of time into the back end, building this YouTube channel, building this social media following, building passive income streams that can help earn me money so I can take these kind of risks, like doing a project where I'm not going to make any money and invest a year of my time. Like only because I have very, very delicately positioned myself with a lot of hard work, am I able to do these things.
Yeah. So this brings us up to our final speed round. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions on the speed round, and you just, off the top of your head, quick little answers, whatever you think it is. You know, you don't have to put too much thought into it, but it's the first thing that comes to mind. On a scale of 1 to 10, how weird would you rank yourself?
7.
7. All right, cool. Are you a Star Wars or Star Wars? Star Wars or Star Trek?
Neither.
Neither. What's what you're not into fantasy at all? Is it more
I'm a nonfiction guy.
what was the worst piece of camera equipment you ever wasted money on?
I tried to buy a back that would convert a film camera into a digital camera. One of those Kickstarter things.
I've always seen many of those.
And the guys could not figure out how to ship it to me successfully. I paid $200 in shipping and deposits and never received the product.
Do you have a guilty pleasure TV show?
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld. All right, cool. Toilet paper, over or under?
Dude, over.
Thank you.
Come on.
We can continue. I don't understand those under people. Have you ever sent the text message to the wrong person?
Yeah, but you got to lean into it.
I once texted my female boss, when I was actually texting my girlfriend by accident. So my boss got my girlfriend's text.
Wow, was it a saucy message?
It was just on the line. She luckily she left.
In the workplace, always a good move, power move. I guess, or harassment. There's a fine line. It's probably harassment actually.
All right, let's see. Try and pull 1 or 2 more here. What was the last movie you saw?
I was watching The Social Dilemma on Netflix.
I hear good things. That's on my list. I hear it's a lot of people say it should be watched. I think you being in social worlds, a lot of this is kind of, you understand it and knew it already, but I think a lot of the world doesn't understand it.
Yeah, I found that even as someone who's like kind of an influencer and deep in the influencer world, I'm so much more detached from social media than most people. But
do you think social media is actually a good thing or a bad thing right now? I mean, you look at the political, where you have so many false narratives and tribalism and people kind of defriending each other just to stay in their own kind of mindset, and it's kind of a scary world when people are not looking first for differences instead of what brings us together.
Yes, I mean, social media is the world now, right? And it can be used in a horrific way, it can be used in a beautiful way, and most people settle somewhere in the middle. So beyond the larger geopolitical implications of that question, just on a personal note, I don't follow my friends on Instagram. And I tell them, let's separate friendship from the internet, because when I log on Instagram, I want to be inspired. I'm going to see pro skateboarders and professional photographers, and people like me that pretend to be professional photographers. No, I only want to see great stuff, and I don't want to see a selfie. If someone posts a selfie, I unfollow them. Hard rule.
That's a pretty good way to look
at it.
Any
social media can be used to be beautifully inspiring and helpful, or it can be a place to feel envious of your friends and miserable. So, find what works for you.
Yeah. If there was an actor to play you in your biography of your life, who would it be?
I get told that I look like Michael Cera quite a bit.
Oh, I could get that. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'll take
absolutely.
that. I wouldn't mind that.
Yep.
But obviously Leonardo DiCaprio, but Michael Cera. But Leonardo.
What was your favorite movie growing up?
Favorite movie growing up? Donnie Darko was a good one.
Ah, yes, that rabbit. If you had to pick a new name for yourself, what would it be?
Shua.
Cool.
Joshua, but the opposite of, yeah.
Yeah. I think that kind of brings us to the end, and I definitely want to plug your book on Kickstarter because it is absolutely beautiful, and I want people to have a chance to get it and fund something that's going to a worthy cause, Doctors Without Borders. Where can people find that? And I will put the link, but I want you to tell people where they can find your work and all of that right now too. Yeah,
so you can find my work on Instagram at Josh Katz, K-A-T-Z. I have a YouTube channel as well. But right now, the most important thing is this book, and you can pre-order it on my Kickstarter for $25, and it's all 100% of profits are going to Doctors Without Borders. It's my dream project. It's a 90-page softcover photo book really thick cover though. It's like almost hardcover. It's beautiful. It's printed in America, and it's what I really care about, and I'm super excited, and I hope that you'll support me if you're interested.
Well, it's an absolutely beautiful book, and I can't wait to get mine. I want to thank you. I can't wait till you and I get to meet up again in person and go out and shoot and have some laughs and stuff like that, and redo this open talk in 10 years when you've accomplished another amazing decade of work. And thank you so much for joining us, man.
Trav, thank you for having me. This has been a really fun experience.
Absolute pleasure, brother. We'll talk soon.